happening? Happy Monday to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, it is very much appreciated. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast, off and running on this Monday. Mike Vrabel spoke to the media down at the owners' meetings in West Palm Beach, and Mike had a lot to say about a lot of different things. But we start with left tackle. The biggest hole on this roster as of right now. The one thing that we keep going back to, wondering if the Patriots are going to do enough to address that hole. Stephon Diggs helped figure out the wide receiver position. It's a fantastic deal. Even more fantastic when we found out that it was a one-year deal, looking at the details of it. But left tackle is still an issue. And what will the Patriots do to try to address that issue? Doug Kide posted the following. Vrabel calls Will Campbell and Armand Membu great, young, talented players. Evan Lazar posted this about what Vrabel had to say, whether or not he sees Will Campbell as an offensive tackle. Here's what Vrabel said, quote, "I think you have to. I don't understand how you could watch him play in the SEC, which is the best conference in college football, against guys that are going to get drafted. I don't think you have to project it," unquote. So Mike Vrabel, right there, bold, black and white. Will Campbell is a tackle. Vrabel believes that Campbell's a tackle. He says just watch him play in the SEC. The film should tell you enough. Not worried about his arm length, not worried about all these numbers. And so I'm watching the film, and the film tells me that he is a left tackle. He played left tackle for a number of years in the best conference in the country. He played well enough from what I see on that film, so I believe he is a tackle. So there's no mystery here. And we know going back to the Combine, Karen Guregian, others at Mass Live wrote that the Patriots believed that Campbell was a tackle. Guregian, I believe, has said as much as arm length be damned. They believe he's a tackle. Well, Vrabel put a face to it today. Vrabel went out there, spoke to the media, and said, he's a tackle. I'm not worried about how other people feel about him. He's a tackle. Now, interestingly enough, Aim Brugler from The Athletic, who does a tremendous job of breaking down prospects and coming up with his top 100, top 150. He has this Bible-like release every football season around draft time, telling you how he feels about each and every guy, and he talks to a bunch of people around the league. Dane Brugler posted that the feedback he gets from most teams in the NFL is that Will Campbell is a tackle. So this is not just Mike Vrabel talking out of school, so to speak. This is not just a Mike Vrabel opinion. Dane Brugler, very well-connected guy, has been doing draft work for a long time. Brugler says, no, most teams in the league, they see Campbell as a tackle. Brugler continues, the tape says Campbell is a left tackle, so that's what he is until he shows he isn't. So you bring him to camp, you say, he's our left tackle, that's the plan, that's the approach, and unless he pukes on himself, he's going to be your left tackle. And that's not just the Patriots, that's most teams across the NFL, according to Brugler. Now, Mark Daniels wrote this about Will Campbell. At this point, and this was in Mass Live today, at this point, according to multiple sources, Campbell has fans on all different levels of the Patriots organization, front office, scouting department, and coaching staff. So this is some more information that we have now, right? We know that the Patriots, there are several people in the organization that love Will Campbell. We know that there have been a number of people in the organization that feel like Will Campbell's a tackle and that they would be more than comfortable drafting him. But Mark Daniels tells us today, this is a very layered conversation throughout this organization. And we're not just talking about front office. We're talking about scouts. We're talking about coaching staff. Now, we know that Mike Vrabel, again, went on the record today saying he believes Will Campbell's a tackle. I have to imagine that at least one of, two of, or all three offensive line coaches feel that Campbell is a tackle. But apparently, there are people in the front office who also feel that way. There are scouts that also feel that way. And so the Patriots certainly sound like they are committed to the idea that Campbell is a tackle. Up and down this organization, that's how they feel. Now, Greg Bedard, my buddy, he ended up writing today at Boston Sports Journal as far as Campbell going at number 4. Bedard asked the question, does that mean they will take him at 4? With all the stuff that Vrabel said today. Bedard wrote, not necessarily. Vrabel kept emphasizing, quote, there's others throughout the draft as well, unquote. So Bedard said, hey, listen, pump the brakes. Vrabel was very complimentary of Campbell. Vrabel called Campbell a tackle during the media session today down in West Palm Beach at the owners' meetings. He sounded like he enjoys Will Campbell, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Campbell is a guarantee at 4. Because Vrabel also kept bringing up other guys in the draft and that the Patriots would be able to find some help for left tackle in the draft, even if it wasn't Campbell, even if it wasn't in the first round. So it's not necessarily a guarantee. But here's what I think. Going back to the combine, all the conversations about Campbell, all the talk about the Patriots loving Campbell, the idea that Vrabel went out there today on the record and said, look, just watch his film, SEC, he's a tackle. I feel like the Patriots board is Hunter, Carter, Campbell. Now, which one is first? I don't know. I would lean towards Carter because Abdul Carter is the perfect prototype of what Mike Vrabel likes an outside linebacker / defensive ends. That kind of size and speed, aggressiveness, all those intangibles, right? Vrabel likes more undersized defensive ends, guys that can scream off the edge, the Harold Landrys of the world. That's why they went out and they signed Landry. So I believe that Carter is likely number 1. I don't know that for a fact, obviously, but I think it's more likely than not that the Patriots have Abdul Carter as the number 1 guy on their board. Hunter is number 2. And I do believe, after everything that we've read and after what Vrabel said today, I do believe that Campbell, if Hunter and Carter are not there at 4, I believe Campbell is the odds-on favorite to go 4th to the Patriots. If they can't trade down, if there's no Carter, there's no Hunter, I believe Mike Vrabel would take Will Campbell. And it goes beyond whether or not believing he's a tackle. Will Campbell is a very Mike Vrabel-like player. If you watch him talk to the media, if you watched him after his pro day and what he had to say about arm length and the measurements, and nobody cared about, how long I was in the arms until, this time of year comes up and now all of a sudden people care. You watch my film for 2 or 3 years. I take care of business. Nobody worried about my arm measurements then, but now everybody's. Will Campbell is a no-nonsense, physical, aggressive leader of men. And I think he fits what Mike Vrabel wants to bring into this organization. I think Mike Vrabel is a big fan of Campbell. So I think if there's no Hunter, there's no Carter, there's no trade down, I believe Mike Vrabel would give the thumbs up to select Will Campbell 4th. Now, I'm not going to dig into the arm length. I'm not going to dig into how I feel about Will Campbell. We talked about it last week. You can check out Friday's podcast. I'm not going to sit here and continue to, yap about the same things. I'm telling you what I think Mike Vrabel believes. And Mike Vrabel today stood by Will Campbell as a tackle prospect, and I think he would be the pick if it's no Carter, no Hunter, no trade down. And I also want to put this out there. There are people who disagree, saying that Campbell is not going to be a tackle, but there are a number of people who believe he is a tackle. Field Yates, ESPN, believes that he's a tackle. Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network, believes he is a tackle. Ross Tucker, we talked about him late last week, said, doesn't matter. This dude's a good football player. You play him. Brian Baldinger, I don't know how many people saw the tweet. It actually came out a couple of days ago, but yesterday it got some run. Baldinger's out there saying, don't care about the arm length. This dude's a tackle. He's good enough to play in the NFL, and he's good enough to be a damn good tackle at that level. Dane Brugler says that most of the NFL believes that Will Campbell is a tackle, and that's how they're handling him going into this draft. The Patriots obviously feel like Campbell is a tackle. So it's not just not just Mike Vrabel. It's not just a couple of people within that organization. Will Campbell is a very polarizing prospect as far as tackle versus guard. There's a number of people who believe that he's not going to be a tackle. Mike Giardi doesn't believe he's going to be a tackle. Greg Bedard doesn't believe he's going to be a tackle. Evan Lazar feels like he could play some tackle. Phil Perry believes he's a tackle. I mean, this is a back and forth thing. So I don't want to paint it either way, that universally people agree that he's a tackle or universally people agree that he's a guard, because that's not what's happening. There's pretty much a split here. And so it'll be fascinating to see if the Patriots get the evaluation correct and if Campbell ends up being a left tackle. Of course, none of us will care if Travis Hunter falls to 4 and we're talking about Travis Hunter on draft night, because that's who I want on this football team. Now, if Hunter, Carter, if they do fall to number 4, what do the Patriots do at left tackle then? Mike Vrabel talked about it. But before we get into it, I want to remind you, don't forget to click that thumbs up as you watch us on YouTube. Helps us with the algorithm. Every like helps us. So don't forget to like as you watch. I know sometimes you might forget to do that. Sometimes you don't want to do it. Doesn't cost you any money. Doesn't cost you a ton of time. Helps us every time you do it. Click that thumbs up. Don't forget to throw a comment in as well. Comments help with the algorithm. And we're trying to get to 6,500 subscribers by the first night of the NFL draft. And we are what? I'd say under 200. We're under 200 away from hitting that goal. So don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And my friends at Spotify, and I mean it, Spotify's numbers are growing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and to follow us there. Apple Pods as well. I see you. So don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. All right, so what do the Patriots do at left tackle if one of Carter, Hunter fall to 4? Because I think if one of those two guys fall to 4, the Patriots are drafting that guy. I think all of us believe that, and I think all of us would agree with that decision. I don't think there's going to be a lot of Patriots fans, if any, that are going to be worked up by the Patriots drafting either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 4. I think if they make that move, if that's what happens, if that's the person they bring in, there's going to be a lot of happy people in New England on draft night. But what happens at tackle if you draft one of those two guys? Because you still have that hole, right? You still have to address left tackle. Whether it's going to be Will Campbell or somebody else, you've got to address tackle. Vrabel talked about it. Here's what Vrabel said about left tackle in the draft. Quote, I think the draft's going to be a good option for us. There's a lot of guys in the draft that we like at a lot of different levels. I'm confident between now and the time that the season starts, we're going to have something that we believe in and a plan that's going to help us. So, of course, the Patriots, they can trade back into round 1. We've talked about that option. I like that idea. If you feel like Josh Connerly is that guy, if you feel like Josh Simmons might be falling and you think he is a legitimate left tackle and you want to take the risk with the injury of the patellar tendon, you can trade back in and draft a guy like Simmons. But as Vrabel said, they like a lot of guys in this draft. And of course, you're going to say that. I mean, it's we have to underline the fact that it is lying season. It is pumping tire season. And Vrabel is in the business of, oh, yeah, we like that guy. We like this, because he doesn't want to be pigeonholed, right? We have to understand that. But I do think the Patriots are looking at the tackle prospects, and they likely have a number of different guys, as Vrabel said, at different levels. Like Will Campbell might be level 1. Armand Membu might be level 1 or tier 1. And then you look at Connerly, and you look at Simmons, and you look at Ariante Ursary. Maybe they feel like Ursary is more second-round guy than late first-round guy. But the Patriots, they will have options. If you get one of Hunter or Carter at 4, you can trade back into the first round, hopefully, fingers crossed, or you just stick and pick at 38. Maybe the Patriots feel like Simmons is going to fall to 38. Maybe they think Connerly is going to fall to 38. Maybe they're just perfectly fine and happy with drafting Ursary at 38. We don't know what their board says. We have no idea how Vrabel feels about those other players, along with Ryan Cowden and Elliott Wolf and company. But there are going to be other opportunities in this draft to land a left tackle. Now, with that said, I've said this many times before. I will say it again. The most comfortable I would be with a tackle is if you draft that left tackle in the first round. Because most of the time, you've got to draft that left tackle in the first round if that left tackle is going to be a true bona fide franchise guy. Doesn't guarantee it. We have other guys that were drafted in other rounds that start at left tackle, and they do fine. But if you look at the numbers, it's usually the first round. And even when you look inside of those numbers, it's usually in like the first 10 picks or so. That's usually where franchise left tackles get picked. So we have to keep in mind that that's the case. It doesn't mean the Patriots are going to swing and miss if they draft an Ursary or they draft somebody else in the second round or third round. They can hit. They can hit. But your chances of hitting on a franchise left tackle decrease. They start to fall precipitously as you get further away from the top 10 in the draft. So we have to remember that. It is inherently a risk to draft any tackle and deem that person a left tackle. It's an inherent risk if you do that beyond the top 10 in the draft, because most of those guys, the vast majority of those guys, don't work out at left tackle. Elliot Wolf said this to Mark Daniels. Daniels wrote this at Mass Live today. Here's what Wolf said on the pursuit of a left tackle. We're very confident, whether it comes from the draft or trade or something like that. We're still going to be turning over rocks and trying to find the best way to acquire talent. I still think certainly the offensive line is an area that we will be looking to improve, but that's not to say we're not looking to improve every area. So Wolf says he's confident they're going to be able to address left tackle, whether that's through the draft or it's through trade or whatever. I think it's unlikely you find the answer to your left tackle problem via trade, because teams don't trade left tackles. They're not in the business of trading left tackles who are going to be starting left tackles. So I find it very hard to believe the Patriots will be able to acquire a guy via trade that is going to be a plug-and-play starting left tackle for you for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I find that incredibly difficult to believe, which leads you to the draft. We've talked about it. And it also leads you to free agency. There are a couple of guys that are still left that you could say, all right, we'll sign them to one-year deals, and hopefully they can give us 10, 12, 14 games. Tyron Smith is obviously on that list. DJ Humphries is obviously on that list. Somebody we've discussed in prior podcasts, Jedrick Wills, is still out there. But all of those guys have major questions. Wills reportedly has a knee issue. Not a lot of teams are confident he can play, or at least play at a decent enough level where you bring him in and he's there for you for, X amount of snaps. So Jedrick Wills, big question mark. DJ Humphries, he sat around all last year, signed with Kansas City, went out there and promptly tore his hammy. So Humphries is a big-time question mark. I also believe he had like a hip thing that was bugging him before last year. So DJ Humphries is a big question mark. And, of course, Tyron Smith, we had a ton of discussion about Tyron Smith last offseason, and he's full of question marks. He has not been healthy. He was not healthy last year with the Jets. He lasted 9 or 10 games. He's had knee problems. He's had back problems. He's had neck problems. He's in his mid to late 30s. So those guys have all sorts of questions. Can you sign one of them for competition's sake? Yes. I'd be fine if they signed, Tyron Smith, for example, and said, we're going to throw you into camp and we're going to try to keep you healthy. And, you're going to have a competition with XYZ. Now, I think when you talk about Tyron Smith and Jedrick Wills and DJ Humphries, we're at this point now where tomorrow obviously is April 1st. And so you're now at this point in free agency where a lot of these guys, I think, are going to wait until the draft is over. And I think teams are going to wait until the draft is over. Because if you're the Patriots and Hunter and Carter get drafted in the top 3 and you draft Campbell at 4, then you don't want to go out there and, you don't want to have anybody in the way of Campbell if you believe Campbell's your starting left tackle. You don't want that to happen. But in the instance of, okay, we got out of the draft and we did not address the left tackle position like we hoped we would, well, now we want to go out there and try to find a Band-Aid or two. Then you go out there and you talk to Tyron Smith, you try to bring him in. Tyron Smith and these other players like DJ Humphries and Jedrick Wills, I think they're at the point now where they're going to wait to see how things play out in the draft. Because when a team doesn't have a left tackle, they get on the phone and they say, we understand that you have a big time need, and our services are available to you. Now, of course, you also have Adarian Lowe, was not very good last year, but he's not apparently the only in-house left tackle candidate, because Doug Kyde posted that Vrabel said Caden Wallace will get an opportunity at left tackle. So Caden Wallace, the idea of drafting him last year, move him from right to left, still seems to be an option here. And Vrabel brought up that, yes, you also need a swing tackle. So you need to see if one of these guys or a couple of these guys in camp can play both positions, because inevitably you're going to get banged up. Morgan Moses is 34, 35 years old. So you need a swing tackle, worst case scenario, to just plug in there and say he can survive. So the Patriots are going to give Caden Wallace an opportunity at left tackle. Andrew Callahan posted Vrabel discussing the Patriots' young players and says about Wallace, quote, "We're only going to evaluate what we see going forward," unquote. So Mike Vrabel is not going to hold last year against any of these young players. Jalen Polk's going to get a clean slate. Javon Baker's going to get a clean slate. Caden Wallace is going to get a clean slate. And they're going to go into camp, and they're going to at least give Wallace the opportunity to prove that he can play some left tackle. Again, not necessarily for him to be your starting left tackle, but to prove that he can play that spot in case of injury, in case you need a swing guy. And you're likely going to need a swing guy. So it's an opportunity. It's not a job given. I would have to imagine Adarian Lowe would be leading the left tackle competition if they don't add to that spot, but I do think they're going to add to the spot. And if they don't draft Campbell, they will end up drafting someone, whether that's moving back into the first round or somebody in the second round, maybe somebody in the third round. But I feel they'll get at least one, if not two tackles out of this draft. And then you go to camp and you have a competition. Now, if you end up not landing that left tackle in the first two rounds, you bring in Tyron Smith or somebody like that. You have them compete against Lowe and Wallace and the young tackles that you bring in, and the best guy wins. The best guy wins. All right, what about Travis Hunter? Does Mike Vrabel see Travis Hunter as a cornerback or as a wide receiver or both? Again, back to Andrew Callahan. Callahan wrote the following: if the Patriots draft Hunter, Vrabel sounds open to him playing both sides if Hunter excels at one position first. Quote, "I think to improve, there has to be a primary focus. Just be able to get some of the details that are required in this league," unquote. So Vrabel says, yeah, I'm open-minded that Travis Hunter can play both cornerback and wide receiver for us at some point, but we're not going to start him out like that. If they were to draft Travis Hunter, it sounds like he would primarily focus on one position. I would have to imagine that would be wide receiver, but he's going to focus on wide receiver, get all of those details down, and then once they feel like Hunter knows the ins and outs of the position at the NFL level, then maybe they start to sprinkle some cornerback action in. But first focus is nail down that one position that you're brought into play. You nail down that one position, and then once you get that down pat, then we start to introduce some other things, and then maybe we start to take a look at you at cornerback. And it makes sense. You don't want to put too much on the plate of Travis Hunter. Even though he played both in college, it's a different level of football, different way of practicing. So it makes a lot of sense to slow the roll with Hunter and say, nope, you're going to be a wide receiver. We're going to work on you at wide receiver. And then once you have that figured out, Travis, we'll start to implement maybe some other things and talk to you about, playing some cornerback for us. And don't forget, Elliot Wolf said that part of the Jalen Polk thing in his mind, why Polk was so bad last year, was because they put too much on his plate way too soon. And it's obvious they don't want to do that with anybody this camp. And they're not going to put too much on Travis Hunter's plate by saying, oh, yeah, we're going to play you a bunch at both positions. I still believe, especially since the Carlton Davis signing, the Patriots would draft Hunter as a wide receiver. And I think he would be in that wide receiver room. That would be his main focus. And I found this interesting. Jacob Gibbs from Reception Perception, he posted a graphic today about Travis Hunter's success by route in 2024 at Colorado. And for example, 9 route, success rate, 63.4%. Post route, 80%. Dig route, 84.2%. Slant route, 85.9%. Out route, 100% success rate. So Travis Hunter, the more people talk about him as a wide receiver, the more people are telling me that they believe he can be a lead wide receiver. A lead wide receiver. And I've seen comparisons to Garrett Wilson. I've seen comparisons to Devontae Smith. I've seen comparisons to Stephon Diggs. And people believe that Travis Hunter would be a lead receiver. I've seen him play receiver, and I think he's damn good. Now, does he need some touch-up? Of course. Is he the greatest route runner? Of course not. But don't forget, he has not been primarily focused on wide receiver at any point during his college football career. When you draft Travis Hunter and you say, Travis, you're going to be a wide receiver, and he focuses 100% of his attention on working, route running, and other stuff, right? And he's doing nothing but wide receiver drills, he should get exponentially better. He's splitting time. He's splitting his brain. So I think when you look at him, you have to project him and say, well, he's going to be devoting 100% of his time as a wide receiver. And if you have any questions about his route running, you believe he's going to be able to pick that up, because to do what he did at the college level is bananas. To do it at as high of a level as he did is crazy. And if you can play two positions at the college level the way Hunter played, you have to believe he'd be able to play one of those two positions at a very high level in the NFL if he's devoting himself to that one position. For some reason, I think some people overlook how difficult it is what Travis Hunter did last year at Colorado. And they don't quite acknowledge or appreciate the details that go into it. And if he's fully focused on one job, I'll tell you from personal experience, it was difficult when I was out in Sacramento and I was not only a full-time on-air host in the afternoon, but I was also a program director because I could never fully focus my attention on one of those jobs. I got up in the morning. I had a phone call with the Sacramento Kings to go over certain things, right? Then I hung up with that phone call and I had meetings with the sales team. And then I had meetings with other hosts. And you're coming up with promotions, and then you got to flip your brain. And now you go to host mode, and now you get to prep for a show. And then you got to go out there and do a 3-hour, 4-hour talk show. Then you go home and you're doing bolt jobs at home. You're taking emails as a program director, and you're watching games and taking notes as an on-air host. 2 full-time jobs, not easy. And Travis Hunter had 2 full-time jobs at Colorado. When you wipe away one of those full-time jobs and you devote all of your energy, focus, and attention to one job, you should be better at that one job, especially when you've been as good at both jobs as he was at Colorado. All right, we got some potentially good news on Christian Barmore. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the podcast an awful lot. We build the community. So here's what Mike Vrabel had to say about Barmore. Evan Lazar had this transcribed. Quote, by all accounts, he's going to participate in the voluntary offseason program. I know that he's feeling better, unquote. Doug Kyde posted, Barmore was in the facility recently to meet with doctors. The team will continue to evaluate him and develop a plan for him. Absolutely a positive step. I always say this when we discuss Christian Barmore. There's no guarantee he returns. We certainly hope the best for him physically, from a health standpoint. As a young man, we hope personally that he gets better and that his blood clots and the health issues are behind him. That's the first thing. There's no guarantee he's going to be back. It's just no guarantee. But what we heard from Mike Vrabel today was positive news. Vrabel didn't come out and say, well, no, he met up with doctors and he's still a long ways away. He's not going to be at the voluntary program. It's not what Vrabel said. but there's no guarantee he returns. There's no guarantee that if he returns that Barmore is going to be the same guy. And the Patriots certainly don't need to rush him back, right? There's no need to rush him back. If Christian Barmore returns and he's at like 80%, this defense is going to be pretty ridiculous, I think. Because even at 80%, you put Barmore side by side with Milton Williams on the interior of this defense. You've got a more aggressive defensive edge in Harold Landry. You got Jennings, part of it as well. You've got Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez as your two outside corners. I mean, I think this defense has just a ridiculous amount of potential if Barmore comes back and he's at like even 80%. If Barmore looks like the Barmore of 2023, he and Milton Williams alone are going to cause havoc for any offensive line. So I certainly hope, again, first and foremost, that Barmore is healthy as a human being and he's back to feeling almost normal as a human being. But then you look forward, you got some good news today that he's expected to take part in the voluntary program coming up in a week or so. And if he's back 80%, 85% or above, I think this defense is going to be really difficult to deal with for any offense in 2025. Vrabel wasn't done. He had more to say on the offensive line. Mark Daniels posted, Vrabel said Cole Strange will compete at center and try to build off when he did at the end of last season. Andrew Callahan posted, Vrabel mentioned Strange in his transition to center late last season. Vrabel said, quote, pretty impressive considering he hadn't spent much time there, unquote. Do I think Cole Strange is going to be your starting center? No. I think that's going to be Garrett Bradbury. I think that's why the Patriots went out and they signed Bradbury. Here's the interesting thing about the Cole Strange comments. It feels to me that Cole Strange is on the outside looking in. And he could be well on the outside looking in. Why do I say that? Because he was a left guard. They drafted him as a left guard. They moved him to center late last season. And now they're talking about, well, we're going to give him another shot at center. So they don't put him back at left guard, which would tell me they don't believe that Cole Strange is their left guard. They didn't believe that he was their left guard last year. They don't believe that he's their left guard this season. It feels like Cole Strange was a Bill Belichick guy. And so last year they weren't in love with him. This year they're not in love with him. They'll try him at center, but I think all of us would put the money on Bradbury being your starting center. So if Bradbury is your starting center, you've got Ben Brown, you've got Jake Andrews behind him. And if they're not going to play Cole Strange at left guard, that tells you they feel, like they've got some of the answers, or at least an answer better than Cole Strange with Layden Robinson or Sidney So or somebody else. So it sounds like Cole Strange is not even going to be really looked at as a left guard. And if he doesn't make this transition to center, if he doesn't, blow away the coaching staff and somehow leapfrogs Garrett Bradbury, he's going to be your backup center at best. Maybe not even that. So I don't know what Cole Strange's future is on this football team. Again, maybe he wows them at center. Maybe he goes to camp and plays great. But right now, it doesn't sound like he's a big part of their plans. If they felt like Cole Strange could start at center, I don't think they go out there and they sign Bradbury. Or at least they don't sign Ben Brown and Bradbury. And it makes you wonder if Cole Strange is just headed to a reserve role if he makes the club. All right, what about Joe Milton? Is Joe Milton going to be traded? I found this to be interesting from Vrabel. Here's what Vrabel said about Milton. Quote, and this is from Mark Daniels. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be the starter. Where that leads to, we'll see as the draft approaches. Where Joe is on April 7th is our off-season workout program. I'll read that one more time, and I want you to tell me in the comments. Does this sound like Mike Vrabel is a Joe Milton guy? Does this sound like Mike Vrabel is telling us that Joe Milton is his backup quarterback and they want to continue to work with him? Here was his answer about Milton. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be the starter. Certainly sounds like Joe Milton wants to start. believes he's a starter, wants to start. So Joe Milton might not be in love with the idea of coming back to the Patriots if he's not going to have a true competition. And I don't think he's going to have a true competition because Drake May is your quarterback of the future. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be the starter. Where that leads to, we'll see as the draft approaches. Where Joe is on April 7th is our offseason workout program. There's zero commitment from Mike Vrabel in those comments. Zero commitment to Joe Milton. Translation, Joe Milton's available. If you had any doubt, if you thought some of the reports out there about the Patriots would be interested in trading him and et cetera, I think we can wipe that doubt away. By the way Mike Vrabel handled that question today, it certainly sounded like Joe Milton wants to start, which, of course, I think every young quarterback wants to start. Not going to hold that against Joe, but it sounds like Joe Milton wants to start, and it sounds like Vrabel is leaving the door open to a trade, saying, hey, we know, where Joe's going to be, April 7th, offseason program. But beyond that, I'm not giving any, I'm not going to give any commitment to Joe Milton. So I read that as Joe Milton's available. All right, some other notes. Mike Vrabel said that there will be changes to Josh McDaniels' offense. This is something we talked about when Josh was hired a few months back. Vrabel admitting that, yeah, there are going to be some changes. Now, will there be wholesale changes? We'll have to wait and see. But we've read about how McDaniels had gone around to different programs last year and that he wants to add different elements to his offense this time around. More motion, more pre-snap gamesmanship, so to speak. Maybe run a little more zone as far as, outside zone in the run game. So it sounds like there's absolutely going to be some changes to this McDaniels offense. It's not going to be what we saw the last time he was here. Another note, Vrabel said that the team would like to draft a running back. Now, he did say that they see Stevenson and Gibson as a good 1-2 punch. So it sounds like, as of right now, Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson are safe on this roster, but the Patriots are going to look at the running back position in the draft, and they would like to add at least one of them. And it makes sense. I mean, the running back position in this draft is so ridiculously deep. And I think at some point, the Patriots are going to have a running back that they like way too much to pass up and say, no, we've got to draft that guy because it's like the 4th or 5th round. And that dude, if this was any other draft, that running back is probably going in the top 2 to 3 rounds. We can get him in the 4th or 5th round. We're drafting him. And I'm all for it. Bring in a younger running back. If you could have Stevenson, Gibson, and a young understudy, it makes a lot of sense to me. So I do anticipate them bringing in a running back. Now, they might not even draft a guy. You can sign a guy as an undrafted free agent. So they would like to draft a running back. Maybe my favorite quote of the entire press conference today from Vrabel, and this was from a Patriots post. They posted the video. Vrabel was asked about taking responsibility if a player is a bust. And here's what Vrabel said. You can put it on me. I'm a big boy. We're going to have a lot of things which go well. And then we'll have some things that won't go as well. And you can put those on me. And that quote is one of my favorites, if not my favorite from today. Because Sergeant Vrabes understands accountability. And he said today, if we screw something up, it's on me. I'm taking that. I'm taking that as the leader of this organization. And I'm not going to throw dirt on Gerard Mayo, and I'm not going to go out of my way to attack Mayo. But I think many of us would agree with this. Gerard Mayo did not do a great job of taking accountability last year. He was given multiple opportunities to do that, and he didn't. Vrabel already is telling us, no, we screw up. I'm a big boy. I'll take the blame. And when your head coach says that, and the leader of your organization says that, it trickles down. If he's willing to take accountability, everybody else is willing to take accountability. Don't forget what happened last year. Again, Mayo did not do a great job of taking accountability. And what happened? A lot of guys in that locker room did not take accountability. And we had all those ridiculous comments from the wide receivers, from Jelani Tavai. Guys were pointing fingers at each other on the radio. And there was just this utter lack of accountability from a lot of people last year. Way too many. And so when Vrabel goes out there today and says, no, if we screw up, if we do something wrong, it's on me. That's the head guy, the head honcho, Sergeant Vrabes, is taking the accountability. And now if you're a player and you don't take accountability, now Vrabel can throw that in your face and say, you saw me take accountability. If I have to take accountability, you've got to take accountability. And that's an important part of building this culture back. All right. I've got one more thing I want to talk about. I was asked about something last week, and I had an opinion last week that I want to amend. I want to amend an opinion from last week. But before I get to that, don't forget to click that thumbs up. Help us out. Let's build the community one like at a time. Help us with the algorithm. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to throw your comments in. Don't forget to subscribe. Again, the goal is 6,500 subscribers by night one of the draft. We're at about 6,330 or so. So we're about 170 away. Don't forget to do that. And sometimes people ask me, by the way, can I get ad-free versions of the podcast? You can on the Patreon page that I run. Ad-free audio, ad-free video of every single podcast that we do on the Patreon. Also, I do other podcasts on the Patreon. I talk about the other Boston sports teams. I talk about the Patriots more. We do some off-the-cuff podcasts, we call them. So $5 a month, Patreon, patreon.com/Nick Cattle, Cattles. Glenn, a new member last night, joined the crew. Again, patreon.com, $1.25 a week. All right, before I get to that opinion from last week that I'd like to amend, I would like to thank Terry for the $50 super chat. Glad I was able to catch the show live today. Thanks. Well, thank you, Terry, as I always say. Anytime somebody wants to spend even $1 on this program, it means an awful lot to me. Disposable income is not easy to come by nowadays. So hard-earned money, helping, contribute to this program means an awful lot. And I mean that. Thank you, Terry, so much for the $50 super chat. All right. Patriots Loco just threw this out there. Who sees both Polk and Baker remaining? I do not. All right, so here is my amended opinion from last week. I think it was, and I hope he catches this podcast in this episode today, and I hope he hung around long enough to hear this. I think it was Head Huncho 757 who asked me about Brandon Aiyuk last week. And I said, I'm out on Aiyuk. I'm out on Aiyuk with, his ACL and the fact that you've got Diggs now, who's also coming back from an ACL. I'm out on giving that much money to two guys who are coming back from such a significant injury. I would be out on Aiyuk. Then I saw this tweet from Adam Schefter yesterday. 49ers owe Aiyuk a $22.85 million bonus if he's on their roster Tuesday, April 1st. We've talked about this, right? So last time I checked, tomorrow's April 1st. Schefter writes, once the 49ers pay that bonus, any trade talks for Aiyuk would be off, and he would be expected to spend the season in San Francisco. So Tuesday looms as Aiyuk's unofficial trade deadline, and no deal currently is expected by then. I tweeted this out. If you want to follow me at Nick C Radio. Let me get the finger right. There you go. Right about there. Right about there. So why do you think Adam Schefter tweeted that? There's only one reason to tweet that out. The only reason that gets tweeted is because San Francisco is trying to build some kind of market for Brandon Aiyuk. The only reason that Adam Schefter tweets that out is because San Francisco is not receiving the kind of offer that they want for Aiyuk. It's the only reason. Everybody knows about this bonus. I've been talking about this bonus. Others have been talking about this bonus for the last couple of months. This is not some mystery, right? Like, we all know that there's a bonus, a roster bonus that hits on April 1st for Aiyuk that's about $23 million. It's on record. Everybody knows it. Everybody has talked about it. So why does Adam Schefter randomly throw out this tweet saying, hey, look, if a deal's not done by Tuesday, the 49ers are going to keep Brandon Aiyuk? It's because San Francisco is trying to get something for Aiyuk. They're trying to get a better offer for Brandon Aiyuk. That's the only reason, literally the only reason that that's going to be tweeted out. Because you don't have to state the obvious. You're only stating the obvious to try to create some kind of pressure or leverage within these conversations, which would lead me to believe that the Niners don't have a very good deal on the table for Aiyuk. So here's my amended opinion. There are lots of pros and cons to weigh regarding Aiyuk, right? Could Aiyuk work with Stephon Diggs on and off the field? What's that mix like, right? Two bigger egos. You got ACLs all over the joint. I mean, I think Kendrick Bourne would likely be part of the trade if you've traded for Aiyuk, but if Bourne is still here, you've got Diggs, Bourne, and Aiyuk all with past ACL injuries. Two guys coming back from ACL injuries. Not great. You got one football. You got one football this year, right? But as Ted DiBiase said, everybody's got a price. Everybody's got a price. If you're telling me you can get Aiyuk for like a 4th round pick, if you're telling me you can get Aiyuk for a 5th round pick in Kendrick Bourne, tell me this wouldn't be tough to turn down for Drake May. Aiyuk, Diggs, Pop Douglas, Hollins, Baker, Polk, Booty. Tell me. You turning that down? I don't think I could turn that down. Given price. Again, everybody's got a price. If you could get Aiyuk for a 4th round pick, or you could get Aiyuk for a 5th round in Bourne. Shoot, even if you could get Aiyuk for like a 4th round pick in Bourne. If you could make that deal, are you going to turn down the opportunity to have Brandon Aiyuk, Stephon Diggs, Pop Douglas, and Mac Hollins as your top 4 receivers with Baker, Polk, and Booty challenging for the final spot or 2 at wide receiver? It's tough, right? I don't think I could turn that down. And I just went over the risks. I just went through the risks, right? There are risks. The ACLs, the egos, the personalities. Diggs and Aiyuk, I'm sure, feel like they're number 1 receivers. That could create some stuff for Drake May that he'd have to work through. But if you could get Aiyuk, Diggs, Pop Douglas, and Mac Hollins as your top 4 receivers, and then Baker and Polk and Booty, and maybe you draft another guy, but you don't have to put a lot of pressure on those younger receivers. Let's not forget, Stephon Diggs' contract, as I said earlier, is really a 1-year deal. So even if the Aiyuk Diggs stuff isn't quite gelling, then you could move on from Diggs next year. I mean, if I have the opportunity to give Drake May, Aiyuk, Diggs, Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, that gives my quarterback a chance, right? And all of a sudden, this offense has changed completely because Aiyuk is an X receiver, and that's what you need. You've got your X receiver in Aiyuk. You've got your Z receiver in Diggs. You've got a slot in Pop Douglas. You've got your outside big presence in the red zone in Mac Hollins. If it all depends on the price, but if that price was low enough, I would take a swing. Now, I'd imagine that there'd have to be some conversation about it, right? Have to be some conversation about how Aiyuk and Diggs would work together. But Diggs made it work with Nico Collins last year. So maybe Diggs would look at Aiyuk and say, no, I get it. And they don't play the same exact position. So that's my amendment. Head Huncho 757. Everybody's got a price. And if the price was low enough, if I can get him for a 4th in Kendrick Bourne or a 5th in Kendrick Bourne, I would do it. Aiyuk, Diggs, Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins, that is a legitimate NFL wide receiver room, 1 through 4. Everybody fits their role perfectly. I take the swing. All right. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Help us out. Let's continue to build this podcast. It's Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. I appreciate every single one of you. Back on Wednesday at 3 o'clock live. Until then, be well.